You're listening to the weekly Parsha podcast with Ari Goldwag, recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Terumah, Israel, 5780-2020. This week's Parsha is Parsha's Terumah, and we have the beginning of the command of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of God, to the Jewish people to create a Mishkan, a sanctuary, in which God would rest His divine presence. The Jewish people would have an opportunity to come and serve God in a unique way in the Mishkan. And as a result of their service of God, as a result of creating this sanctuary, God would dwell in their midst, in the midst of the Jewish people. Also, in Mikdash, I'd like to share with you a beautiful idea from Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, Sichas Musar. And before I get into the meat of what he has to say, I'll just give you his introduction, which I'm not going to read inside, but it's very powerful and important to understand. And that is that the parshas of the tabernacle, of the sanctuary, of the Mishkan, are unique in the Torah. There's an extensive description of the command to create the different parts of the Mishkan, to create all the different aspects of the structure itself, of the kalim, the vessels that were used inside of the Mishkan. And then we have the actual creation of those things and the description of all of them. And the Torah seems to go on and on. We have this week's parsha, next week's parsha. We have two parshas farther along that describe all of these different aspects of the Mishkan, and he points out that there's an amazing thing we find Chazal say in regards to the small, it's just a few psukim that Eliezer speaks about the story of what happened when he came to find Rivka, and he describes the whole story. The Torah had just told us the story, and then we hear Eliezer repeating the story. And Chazal tell us that there are many things in the Torah that are what Chazal refer to as the teachings of the sons, the teachings of the children, that are taught to us in a letter. They're not even actually said explicitly in the Torah, but they're mentioned or they're inferred from an extra letter in the Torah, from an extra word in the Torah, and we're able to infer many, many different things that are not stated explicitly. But when it came to the description, the speech of the slave of Avram Avinu, of Abraham, which was Eliezer, the Torah goes through and shows us each and every word and each and every action, because it wants to teach us certain things about Derech Eretz, the way that things are supposed to be, the way that things are supposed to, a person's supposed to interact with others, etc. When it comes to the Parsha of Terumah, Parsha of Tetzaveh, Vayaka Bekude, so we have these descriptions of the Mishkan, which are extensive and doubled. And the Mishkan was only for that time. Let's remember, the Mishkan was only used, well, not just in the wilderness, it was also used until the Beis HaMikdash, the temple, was to be built. But once the Beis HaMikdash was there, it stood for approximately 400 years. Second Beis HaMikdash, second temple, stood for another 400 years. And we will have the Mishkan again when Mashiach comes, as per Chazal. Our sages tell us that. It's a Gemara in Sukkah, Gemara in other places. But for all intents and purposes, it seems very difficult to understand why the Torah repeatedly speaks about the Mishkan, the sanctuary. What is it there to teach us? So Reb Chaim tells us that it must be, and I'll read this part inside, Mikemesh HaMishkan hu madoyer shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu kiviyachol memela muven shuhu nivra v'nasa kedugma shel mala. The Mishkan, the tabernacle, was a place where Hashem appears in the world, so to speak. And he tells us that the Mishkan itself was meant to be a replication, in a certain sense, of the way the upper worlds are created, where Hashem himself, as it were, we don't know what this means, obviously, we have to be careful about Hagshama. Hashem is not physical, Hashem has no physical presence, but our perception of Hashem, our perception of the way He interacts with us, so there's the way that He appears, so to speak, in the spiritual realms, that is duplicated in the Mishkan. And therefore, we need to understand that when the Torah is giving us this entire description of all of the details of the Mishkan, it's for a reason. We can understand what's going on above. So with that, bit of information, we start to have a little bit of an understanding why the Torah tells us so many details. Of course, he tells us that there are deep secrets that are contained within all the different details of the Mishkan. This is something that we don't understand. Some maybe the Mukubalim understand, the Kabbalists. We're going to look at some interesting points that are taught by our Chazal, by our sages, in regards to the Beis Hamikdash, in regards to the Mishkan, in regards to the tabernacle. And we begin with the idea, of course, the beginning of any concept in the Torah, the beginning of any idea is always the most important foundational idea, because the Rosh, the head, the beginning, just like a Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year, is the foundation for the entire year. It's the seed. So to the first point that we talk about in regards, Bereshis Bar Elokim, in the beginning of the Torah is Bereshis. So there's so many different things to understand about the word Bereshis, about the letter Beis of Bereshis, which we spoke about when we spoke about Bereshis. But over here as well, the beginning of the Mishkan, the beginning of the tabernacle, God says to the Jewish people, bring to me a donation. Okay, Vasu li mikdash, Pasuk says, you shall make for me a temple, a sanctuary. Okay, what is the idea of Yichlu li truma, which is the foundation of the sanctuary? Bring for me, take for me a donation. Bring a donation. Pirshu Chazal li lishmi. Rashi brings it. Chazal tell us an amazing thing, an important thing, a foundational thing that we need to understand. Li, bring it for me. What does li mean? Lishmi, bring it for my sake, God says. Don't do it with any ulterior motives. Do it because bring your donation for me. Pure, with a pure intent. Every single thing in the Mishkan, the tabernacle, needs to be done for the sake of God, only for the sake of God. A person should not, when they bring that donation to the Mishkan, to the sanctuary, it shouldn't have any ulterior motive, shouldn't have any selfish reasons it's done. And he brings a beautiful idea, unbelievable idea, from the building of the Beis Hamikdash. Ksiv. He brings, and follow this because it's really interesting, it's very foundational. Pasuk says in Melachim, in 1 Kings, chapter 5, verses 16 through 19. King Solomon sent a message to Hiram, who was a certain king. David Avi, you knew my father David, King David. He wasn't able to build the temple for the name of Hashem his God. The verse tells us that King Solomon was sending a message to Hiram. So he said to him, you know, that my father wasn't able to build a temple because there were so many wars that were going on. He was involved in wars. So Solomon says, Shlomo HaMelech says to Hiram, I'm the one who God said would build the Beis Hamikdash, build a temple, as God said to my father, your son, who's going to follow you, who's going to be sitting on the throne in your place after King David dies. So he's the one who's going to build the Beis Hamikdash, the temple, for my name. The Radak explains, so the Radak tells us that Shlomo HaMelech, in explaining to Hiram why King David didn't build the Beis Hamikdash, but rather Shlomo, his son, is going to build the Beis Hamikdash, he explained it. He said it because of the wars, but that's not the real reason. He said that because he wanted to protect the honor of David HaMelech. But that wasn't really the reason. The real reason was Hashem had decided that he wouldn't build the Beis Hamikdash. Now, what was the real reason? We need to understand, why did he say that? And he goes through, I'm not going to read the whole thing inside, but he says, you know, there were wars in the time of King David. Yes, David HaMelech fought off all of the enemies of the Jewish people, held them at bay, and then at a certain point, the Torah tells us that there was an end to the wars, and there was peace, and then King David was told that he's not going to be able to build the Beis Hamikdash. So it's clearly not because of the wars. He says that what we see is that King David did have an opportunity to build a Beis Hamikdash, but he was prevented, as the Navi points out. Why did he tell him that had to do with the wars? What's the idea? So he says an amazing thing. Hear this, amazing thing. Says Reb Chaim Shmulevitz. It seems to me like this. Since he had wars, and there would be more wars after the quiet, there would be offensive wars. So, but King David, since he was involved with war, he wasn't able to build a Beis Hamikdash. Why? King Solomon said, when he dedicated the temple, he said like this: the Jewish people, when they're going to go out to war, after the Beis Hamikdash, after the temple is built, so they're going to pray, they're going to come to the Beis Hamikdash, they're going to come to the temple, and they're going to pray to have success in war. Vahainu explains to Chaim Shmulevitz, Shatfila beBeis Hamikdash mo'ilat Yisrael l'netzachas avim b'milchama. The Beis Hamikdash will have, besides of course for the fact that it's going to be a place where the Jewish people are going to serve God, bring their korbanos, bring the sacrifices, etc., bring atonement for themselves for any sins that they might have committed. Besides to that, it's also going to be a tremendous tool in war. Why? Because whenever the Jewish people go out to war, all they need to do is to pray to Hashem, pray to God, that they should have success in their war. And because of the Beis Hamikdash, because of the power of their connection to God, because of the war, because of the Beis Hamikdash, they will be successful at war. The Medrash tells us that Haman, he wrote a letter, and he wrote as follows. He's speaking about the Jewish people. If they're going to build the temple, build the Beis Hamikdash, what they do, they come in and they do all kinds of magic there. When they come out of the temple, because of their powerful magic that they do in the temple, so they're able to destroy the entire world. Okay? But Haman understood something, which of course was warped by his description of it, talking about magic. But the truth was that the Jewish people, because of the Beis Hamikdash, because of the temple, because of their prayers there, because of their connection to God through the temple, they had the ability to be more successful at war. Says Chaim Shmulevitz, it's an amazing thing. Since King David was going to be involved in war, King David, he had a reason, an ulterior motive to wanting to build the Beis Hamikdash, because he would thereby be able to be more successful at war. Amazing thing. When he builds the Beis Hamikdash, it's not going to be completely l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven. There will be some ulterior motive, even if it's to the benefit of the Jewish people. But nevertheless, it's not going to be completely for the sake of God. Of course, when the Jewish people win a war, that's also an honor to heaven, so to speak, because it shows that God is on the side of the Jewish people. God is on the side of those who do what's right. But it still takes away from the purity of the L'Shem Shamayim, of it being done for the right reasons. In the end, who is it that won the war? The Jewish people, right? The Jewish people are the ones who won the war. That's what we see on the surface. Says Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, when it comes to being l'shem shamayim, when it comes to doing things for the sake of heaven, it needs to be completely pure. There can't be any semblance of it being for a selfish motive. We find regards to sacrifices, when it comes to regards to making an object holy for the sake of God, it can't be for the sake of God and also for the sake of oneself. It has to be pure. It has to be completely for the sake of God. Lishma. That's the idea of lishma. Okay? So this explains Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, why David HaMelech was not able to build the Beis Hamikdash. It was because if he would build it, it would not be done completely l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven. And so he's teaching us here an amazing thing, that when it comes to Lishma, what is the idea of Lishma? What is the idea of doing something for the sake of heaven? What does it mean coming in and bringing a nedava, a donation to the temple? It has to be done completely l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven. It has to be done completely for God. It can't have any ulterior motives. If there's an ulterior motive, it takes away from the binyan ha-Mishkan. Because the Mishkan is about God appearing in the world, about God placing His divine presence upon us. And where does God appear? God appears in the place where we get rid of ourselves. To the extent that we get rid of our own egos and our own interests and our own selfish motives, to that degree Hashem comes into our life and manifests in our lives and reveals himself in our lives. That's the first point that we see here. And Chaim tells us another point. He says an amazing thing. The first point is Lishma, needs to be done for the sake of God. Completely for God. Second point is that there's an edivo slave. There's a giving up of oneself. When a person brought a donation to the Beis Hamikdash, to the sanctuary, to the Mishkan, so the verse tells us there was an edivo slave, there was a giving up. He says to us an amazing thing here. He brings down Reb Chaim Shmulevitz. Hine b'seder hadvarim shel trumas hamishkan nimnu avnei shem avnei miluim lebasayf. There's a very interesting fact that could easily go unnoticed, and that is when it enumerates the precious stones that were used on the ephod, on the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol, of the high priest. So these precious stones which were given, they're enumerated last. But the truth is that they were extremely expensive. They had a very high value. The Gemara in the Kedushin says on Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph, the Gemara tells us that Dama ben Esino is a certain Gentile who had an opportunity to sell a precious stone that was to be used in the ephod on the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol. And it was the key to it was underneath the feet of his father. His father was sleeping. He didn't want to wake him up. And as a result, he lost 600,000 Shishim Riboy Dinrei Zav, 600,000 gold coins. Okay, so we're talking about extremely valuable precious stones. So why were they mentioned last? They're tremendous value. So why are they mentioned last of all of the things that were given to the Mishkan? The Orach Chaim asks this question because of the time Shenirnu was saved in Nishan Asim Eviu Oisam Acharena. He says an amazing thing. Who were the ones who brought those precious stones? It was brought by the Nisim. And the Nisim, who were the princes of each of the 12 tribes, why did they bring it last? Why did they wait till the last second? They said, look, we want to be the ones to fill in the gaps. Let the Jewish people bring all of the things that they're going to bring. And at the end, we'll see what's missing, and we will bring it last. Now, even though this was a very nice thing, and indeed at the end they brought something extremely precious, extremely valuable, nevertheless, since there was an aspect of, when a person has an edivo slave, when a person feels excited and anxious, and they just want to give of themselves to give a donation to the Beis Hamikdash, to the temple, to the Mishkan, to the tabernacle, so there should be no pause. If there's a pause, even if it's for a good reason, it takes away from the value, of the power of that action. There needs to be an edivo slave. The Torah is telling us that in the building of the Mishkan, the Jewish people, in contrast to the Nisim, even though they did it for a good reason, but the Jewish people as a whole, they were super excited, super anxious. Right away, I have an opportunity to give. I'm going to give. I'm going to jump in. I'm going to do whatever I can. That was the edivo slave of the Jewish people. And he says an interesting thing. He says even furthermore, the Orach Chaim also points out that for the most part, the donations that were given by the Jewish people, actually I'm going to read this inside. Another reason why they were mentioned last. Based on what the Gemara says in Yuma, these precious stones which the Nisim had were brought by the clouds of glory. They got them for free, so to speak. The Nisim didn't lose anything when they brought those precious stones. Everyone else who brought, they brought from their own pocket. They had that money, they had that gold. It might have been the wife's precious necklace. It might have been some other gold that they had, but it was brought, it was done in a way which required their effort, and it wasn't just on a silver platter to them. A person has a certain, it's precious to a person, the thing that they did, that they have, that they worked hard for, and now that they have that money, they give that money. That shows a tremendous it's a sacrifice. That's an Nediva slave much deeper. The Jewish people as a whole, the Nediva slave that was involved, the sacrifice that they made of their things was much deeper and greater than the Nediva slave, the sacrifice that was made by the Nesim. And therefore the Avnei Shayim were mentioned last because they weren't as chashuv, they weren't as important, they didn't represent a great sacrifice. Elu hayu yisodos of Shalom Mishkan. So this is the foundations, this is the beginning, the foundations, the root, the way that the Jewish people would be involved in creating the Mishkan, creating the tabernacle. It was founded on these ideas. First of all, it was done with a pure intent, not with any selfish motives. All of the raw materials which were brought in order to create the vessels of the Mishkan, it was done with Nediva slave, with a self-sacrifice on the part of the Jewish people. This is where Hashem is going to, as a result of their actions, he's going to place his divine presence in the Mishkan, inside of the sanctuary, and upon the Jewish people. And now he finishes off and he says, he says something very interesting, that Hashem, why does he come down into the Mishkan? He says an amazing thing. And this is, he quoted it earlier, I didn't read this part, but he said that Hashem said to him, as it were, he said, I don't know if it was to himself or he said to Moshe Rabbeinu, when he brought down the Torah down to the world, Hashem said, this is a precious thing. The Torah, I can't let go of the Torah. It's supposed to be up here in Shemaim, in the heavens. You're going to bring it down, you're going to place it inside of the Mishkan, inside of the Aron HaEdus, right? What was inside of the box? It was the Torah. You're taking the Torah down, I'm going to come down with you. I can't be, if you're taking my precious Torah down into the world, I'm going to come down and be there where the Torah is as well. Okay? So Hashem, where does he come down to? He comes down into the Mishkan because of the Torah. I can't separate myself from the Torah. And so he comes down. So you want to know, well, how does this apply to me? Where does this apply in my life? Of course, it has to do with the L'Shem Shamayim, doing things for the right reasons, doing things for God's sake, and of course, doing it out of self-sacrifice to the extent that I sacrifice, whether it's in tzedakah, giving charity, whether it's in my dedication to my community, whether it's in my dedication to Torah. All of these areas need to have this level of self-sacrifice. The only true way for a person to be a place where God places his divine presence in the world is only through the Torah. The conditions are exactly the same conditions that we find in regards to the tabernacle. When a person learns the Torah, when a person is involved in Torah living, when a person is involved in learning the Torah, giving tzedakah, charity, as we said, all these different things has to be done to the extent that it's purely done for the sake of Hashem, purely done for the sake of heaven, without any selfish motives, without my name needing to be on it, through self-sacrifice. And in the Torah, both of these things are really one thing. When learning Torah is not for my own sake at all, but it's done for God's sake, so there's no greater sacrifice, a giving up of myself than this. When a person is learning Torah, so he's completely giving himself up for God. He's completely sacrificed himself, so to speak, but he's sanctifying himself, actually, more accurately, he's sanctifying himself to Hashem completely. A person who's a true Ben Torah, a person who truly learns with the right intent, so such a person is where God will place his divine presence in this world. I want to bless you. I ask you to bless me. Hashem should help us to be able to do things for the right reasons. L'shem shamayim, to limit our egos, to limit the self-motivation, the motivation which we have, which is because of ourselves, because of our selfish reasons. Hashem should help us to sacrifice, to give up for the Torah, to give up in our service of Hashem, such that we indeed become a place where God manifests in the world. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos. This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.